We acknowledge the traditional owners of country throughout Australia and recognise their continuing connection to land, waters and culture. We pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging.
Welcome to This Song Is Yours, the podcast where we dive deep into the art of songwriting, chat with some of the most exciting artists in the world, and explore the stories behind their songs. I'm your host, Simon Fink, and thank you for joining us. Our guest this week on the podcast is Jay Som. The musical project of LA-based songwriter, multi-instrumentalist and producer Melina Duterte first began as a DIY bedroom pop endeavour, leading to 3 beloved studio albums and tours with artists like Paramore, Japanese Breakfast and Mitski, just to name a few, before she stepped back from the project in 2020. Over the past 6 years, however, Melina hasn't been idle. She has recorded collaborative projects like the Bachelor EP with Palehound, but more importantly, shifted her focus behind the scenes, diving deep into vintage gear, production, and learning how to engineer. That effort has paid off in a huge way as she went on to produce some of the biggest indie records of the last decade, including boygenius's The Record and Lucy Dacus's Forever Is a Feeling. Last month, Melina made her long-awaited return with the 4th Jay Som record titled Belong, a gorgeous and glowing evolution of her sound. It blends everything she's learned over this last 6 years, pushing her from lo-fi bedroom pop into widescreen indie rock. Belong also marks the first time she's welcomed guest features, with Jim Adkins of Jimmy Eat World and Hayley Williams appearing across this record. In today's episode, we are chatting with Melina about returning to Jay Som and the world of Belong. We talk about the influence of 2000s indie rock on this record, trade some gentle fangirling over Death Cab for Cutie, and discuss how the Hayley Williams collaboration came to life. It is an incredible record, one we're really excited for everyone to hear. We do want to say a massive thank you to Nat for her help with today's episode, and remind everyone that the brand new Jay Som record, Belong, is out right now. You'll find links within the show notes on where you can stream or purchase the record, and follow Melina across all of her socials. While you are in the show notes, please make sure you subscribe to This Song Is Yours and go and follow us on Instagram and TikTok. We would really love it and appreciate it if you did. It does help us out and it ensures that you stay up to date with new episodes, guests, and everything else that we've got going on. Now let's get into it. Here is our conversation with Melina Duterte from Jay Som. Please welcome to This Song Is Yours, Melina Duterte, aka Jay Som. Melina, hello there. How's it going?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
My absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today. Very excited because when people are listening to this conversation, there is a brand new Jay Som record out. It is called Belong. Firstly, congratulations on this record. How are you feeling with it now being out and available for people to kind of listen to and enjoy?
I'm so excited for people to hear it. I'm just so ready. I've been ready for everyone to hear it. Yeah. It's been a while.
I was going to say it's the first in, I think, around 6 years, which is exciting. I know that there was the, the joint album with Palehound under the name of Bachelor. So they're still putting out music, but this is the first one under your name, which I imagine kind of has a different sense of emotion and a different sense of pride as well in terms of being excited about these songs coming out.
Yeah. I mean, definitely a lot of pride, and also, I think just mostly excitement, some nervousness for sure, but mostly excitement to be back and doing Jay Som. Yeah.
100%. Do nerves usually come into the process of putting out a record? Are you, yeah?
100%. I feel like maybe because it's been release week too, I'm like just anticipating so much. And I think in release weeks and release days, it's a lot of just anticipation, and it's hard not to think of what everyone will think of the record.
I think that's a very human emotion to kind of feel, though, in terms of that anticipation and that anxiety. But it's almost that nice thing. I know catharsis is thrown around a lot in terms of the music world and in terms of songwriting, but a number of songwriters we've spoken to in terms of that release week once it's out in the world, it's almost like the genie's out of the bottle. You can't really do anything but go with it at that point. And I imagine that there's a sense of freedom in doing that as well.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Yeah.
This is, I want to say from the get-go, a different Jay Som record. Like it's still kind of playing around with some genres like in previous efforts. And I know that what was it? I think like Peace Out and Devotion, obviously two very different tracks from that last record. But this one, it almost feels like a reintroduction or like a version 2.0 almost of Jay Som. Is that how it was intended to be, I guess, in terms of coming out with these new songs, a newer, different sounding record almost?
I think probably it was a natural evolution. I mean, after 6 years, you listen to so much music during that time. And I was listening to different pop music. I was listening to different indie music. Throughout this time, I feel like streaming it got different, and the music general landscape and everything changed. So the way I've consumed music is a little different now. So I feel like as though I wanted to get more in touch with my roots and kind of what music I grew up on. I've always loved alternative rock and grew up on like pop punk music, and I was a kid in the early 2000s, so it felt kind of, I don't know, necessary entering my 30s to kind of have like one last moment where I'm like, oh, I loved being a kid, and have this kind of youthful energy, and also, a mix of kind of the poppier stuff that I've been into lately.
100%. There is an energy across this record. I want to say it's almost, as a fellow person in there, maybe a little bit later in my 30s, but I'm a big fan of shows like The OC and things like that, and a fan of that kind of pop punk, emo, indie alternative rock of the 2000s. There's definitely smatterings of it across this record. You can kind of tell, which I want to talk about later in some of the songwriting. Do you listen to new music? Do you listen to many things when you're going into the process, or do you kind of like to keep a clean ear almost when you're going in and shaping some of these songs?
I'm always listening to music. I'm always referencing. I mean, even my demo titles are always titled after the artist or the band. Mm-hmm. Like Jimmy Eat World song, literally, or Deer Hunter song, like Japanese house song. Like I'm not shy when it comes to referencing artists, and I'm always listening and referencing people as I'm making music too. I'm like, I really want this bass line to sound just like this. And I think that's also from my background of, being a producer as well. I think that's part of the job, and that's something that I just can't turn off, because part of why I make music is because I just love music, and I'm a fan of it, and I want to sound like other musicians that I love. So
I think that's 100% fair, though. I think that there's a number of artists that are coming up in that similar kind of age bracket we've discussed, where you're looking at influences that are still very much current, if that makes sense. Like, I think that a lot of people in their 30s have musicians maybe like Jimmy Eat World, Connor Oberst from Bright Eyes. I think that there's a number of people that are still around and playing, and are still like relatively, I know Jimmy Eat World tour quite frequently, and I'd say is still quite at the top of their game in terms of touring and doing things like that. And so it's I think it's kind of normal to bring some of those references in and then have them play out sonically on the artist's own record. Yeah. The production that you kind of mentioned, I know that in between the last Jay Som record and this one, there's been quite a jump, I want to say, almost in terms of your production skills, the things that you've gone and taught yourself in between that time, and kind of taking on different projects. The boygenius record obviously being a very big and successful one, so congratulations on that as well. I know that you had a hand in producing the record by boygenius. And I think the I want to say the most recent Lucy Dacus record as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a little bit on that one.
Did you find this time around that having, I guess, all these new production tips, tricks and experience with boygenius and Lucy this time around changed how you maybe produce the songs in terms of approaching it maybe from more of a, I know that you previously produced anyway before, but did it change the way that you approached music and writing it in terms of the production this time around?
Yeah, I'd say they were, a pretty big inspiration and influence in my production, but I could just say that for everyone that I've worked with the past 6 years, like there were significant parts of my life being in boygenius and being in the studio with him, and then also working with Lucy and just touring with her, and also just being in the studio with her like quite a bit this year. And it's just really fun to be around someone that is in such a high caliber of writing, and she's just so good at what she does, and it's amazing to be around that, like someone has a very clear idea and gets shit done, but yeah, everyone I produce, whether they're smaller or a bigger artist, I've picked up a lot of techniques and little quirks that everyone has when they record or write, and I keep it in my brain and think like, okay, that's really cool. I'm gonna try this thing that they did. I'm gonna try, maybe doing this thing in the notes app, and like little things like just like trying to schedule my morning in a very strict way, and then having lunch, because before I'd be like, I'm not gonna eat, and you don't get the midday slump because you're like, I'm an artist, I'm just gonna power through it. And I can't be like that anymore. Like I said, I'm 31 now, and so I need to be a little nicer to my body and my brain. And as I've moved through the world, working with a lot more people and collaborating with my heroes too, it's just easy to pick it up, all the fun little quirks that everyone has.
I absolutely love that, and I do agree. I think the not tortured artist, but the not cliche, maybe the stereotype of the artist and the musician these days. Once you do hit your 30s, you do have to be a little bit more regimented in how you approach it. I think that's quite a common thing. Yeah.
And your back hurts too. That's the thing that they don't say.
They did not tell you. They did not give you the warning about that. No, not at all.
They didn't tell you that.
You just mentioned working alongside some heroes. This record has some incredible guests on it. You've got Jim Adkins from Jimmy Eat World and Hayley Williams from Paramore. I know when you mentioned it just before in terms of the demo might be titled Jimmy Eat World song, was there an original intention to get Jim on that track, or did it kind of just, once you built it and thought maybe I'll reach out, how did it play out getting Jim on the track? Because it definitely has a Jimmy Eat World kind of vibe. I want to say almost around the time of their Futures record. I'm not sure if you're...
I love Futures.
Yes, yeah. But yeah, how did that kind of happen? How did Jim get on the record?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a huge Jimmy Eat World fan. Bleed American's my favorite record. I remember buying it at a Barnes & Noble when I was a kid, and my brother and I would just listen to that record all the time. The CD, we like wore it out, and we'd just be like singing in the car on the way to school, and that album still holds up, and it still means a lot to me. But when I made Float, that was the first song I wrote for the record, and I had worked on it with all of the co-producers, and it was pretty far along in the process of recording, and lyrics written, arrangements done, tracking, guitar, blah blah blah, everything like that, vocals, and then I kept hearing a voice. Like I kept thinking, I really need to have a guy's voice on this, and I just kept hearing Jim, and no one else. And serendipitously, my manager manages Courtney Marie Andrews, who used to be in Jimmy Eat World. And so that felt like a necessary kind of connection that had to be made. And he was super down just immediately, like, I love this. Let's work it out. But what's funny is that he didn't record the vocals in time for the album before its due date. So we actually had everything mixed and mastered before he did the vocals, and I was like, okay, he's probably not going to sing on this. That's fine. Maybe we'll do this for like a deluxe version. And the songs are being mastered, and he texts me out of the blue, and he's like, hey, I'm going to go in the studio in like 2 hours. Like, do you want to talk about this? And I can lay down the tracks. And luckily I just came back to LA, and I was here in my home studio, and I was like, yes, let's do this. And fired up my computer, and we were just, talking on the phone about gear and kind of just shooting the shit. And he was so nice and really curious about what I wanted him to do and how to sing. And I just told him to go for it and just sound like him, because I reached out to him for a reason. And I just think he's like my favorite part of the song. Yeah.
I imagine it must take an incredible amount of trust in an artist. And although that their work is obviously very dear to yourself, that being able to say, just like, go for it, that there's a lot of trust that you're putting in him as well, in terms of a collaborator, in terms of what he's going to hopefully have his track sound like.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. I think sometimes collaborations can go south. Like, some of my favorite artists have collaborated, and I think, no, you guys should not have done this. But I think having both Jim and Hayley was just a no-brainer, and the trust was just not even, I didn't even consider that. I've listened to their music so much. I respect them so much as artists and musicians, and I just knew that there was, they were just going to do something that I liked.
It definitely does elevate those songs. I know we spoke about early 2000s kind of Indian alternative rock. The Hayley Williams track Past Lives does, what was it? Passenger Seat by Death Cab for Cutie. Very kind of strong Death Cab vibes that I picked up. Maybe the guitar, the way that it played out was definitely very enjoyable to have a listen to as a big Death Cab fan.
I love Death Cab for Cutie. Yeah.
So good. So good. How did the Hayley collaboration kind of come about? And do you talk about those influences, or is it that the track's kind of already built and that she's kind of coming on near that tail end to add her vocals, similar to the kind of Jim experience?
Yeah, she was the final kind of puzzle piece for the demo, or just the initial tracking phase. But I toured with Paramore in 2018 for the After Laughter tour. It was Soccer Mommy first in the summer, then me for the second half, and that was one of the most insane tours I've ever been on. It was so fun. It was so cool. And Hayley was the first person I met, and she was so kind, and she's just consistently been so kind, so gracious, uplifting of other artists. Like, look at her year so far with the new record that she came out with, but she's had all these collaborations with people because she just raises people up, and she's one of the greatest artists of all time. I think that was also a no-brainer to work with her. And she actually introduced me to Steph Margiano, who co-produced a bunch of songs on the record. But Steph convinced me to fly out to Nashville for a couple days in March of 2024, last year. And she kept saying, like, hey, I think we can go out to Nashville, and I think Hayley will be there. We should just see if she's going to be around. And luckily she was around. I scrapped the initial idea that we were going to show Hayley and ask her to sing on. And I wanted her to sing on this alternative rock song inspired by a band that I can't name. And just wrote it all on the spot, me, Mal, and Steph. And she came in the next day, and hung out for like 6 hours, and we were just hanging out and catching up and talking about life and talking about music. And she talked about Paramore, and I got to ask her for some advice. And she was pouring us green tea from her green tea blend with the tea shop in Nashville. It was just the best time ever, and everyone was laughing. And yeah, it was like super fun to bring that session home in LA and just rework a lot of the tracks too, because when someone like her, someone with such a powerful, iconic voice is on your song, you need the instruments and everything to match that level, because she's so, it's just like a gold nugget, like in your song. And I don't know, I still can't believe that it happened.
It's an incredible track on an incredible album. So again, not just for the Hayley Williams collab, but this whole record, Belong, you should be very proud of. I was wondering whether you might share, if you hadn't picked up by now, we are primarily a songwriting podcast talking about songwriting. I was wondering whether you might share your introduction to music and where you got your interest originally in writing music and lyrics.
Yeah, my introduction to music in general, I feel like my love for recording music happened at the same time as the writing portion. But I remember I wrote my first song on guitar with my friend Maxine, and it was about Taco Bell. Mm-hmm. And we were 12 years old. Mm-hmm. So that sounds about right.
Yeah,
right?
Checks out.
But yeah, my parents or my mom got me an acoustic guitar when I was 8 because I expressed interest in becoming a rocker, because I was watching a lot of VH1 and MTV, and started playing guitar and learning tabs from Blink-182, kind of singing along to their songs. But yeah, fast forward to 12 years old, started writing songs for fun, just like little joke songs. And that was the age of MySpace too. So I had MySpace and I had some bands on there. I had my first solo project ever was called The Platonic Sea Lion. Mm-hmm. So such a bad name. I don't know.
It's honestly not the worst first band name. People have a lot of worse band names, so please don't be too hard on yourself.
Exactly. It's kind of cute. It's very much, of that era. It's 2007, like Juno soundtrack vibes. So yeah, The Platonic Sea Lion had some tracks on MySpace, and eventually got older, and in high school I was 17 and started Jay Som, and I became a little bit more serious with the writing stuff and found that I could upload my own songs to Bandcamp and SoundCloud, and I was introduced to so many different artists around the world, and that's when my love for indie really grew. And I grew up listening to a lot of Ben Gibbard and Death Cab for Cutie, and I don't know, something about his lyrics and the fantasy of it all, and also the hyper specific lyrics were really fun to be inspired by. And at the same time, like listening to Blink-182, which is like poo poo pee pee jokes, was really, I guess, inspiring too. But and like even the Yeah Yeah Yeahs, really loved Karen O's writing and just wanted to know what it felt like to make music and write. Yeah,
I think that although a lot of their catalogue might veer into territory which is somewhat juvenile, Mark and Tom and Travis, to their credit, every now and again do have some really heartfelt, or lyrics that kind of cut through as well. And so I think that across that, Ben Gibbard, Karen O, it's quite like a good trifecta of artists to inspire and be able to kick off, like, I guess, a journey into music.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Yeah. And then later on, it was like Toro y Moi, which became like, okay, there's more to like other indie music, like the pop stuff and the R&B leaning kind of genres.
It's something that I find fascinating, and I think it's why I love music, or one of the reasons why I love music, is the fact that you can resonate with something, but then if you do, that opens another door to a number of their references, if that makes sense. Like by loving Ben Gibbard, that opens up your own mind and your way of approaching artists to whatever he was listening to, and whether that be, you know, artists from the 70s or 80s, whatever it may be, that it then continues to expand that that wanting to find, I guess, new artists and music to connect with.
I agree. That's literally like the fact of Ben Gibbard being inspired by Built to Spill. Like early Death Cab for Cutie is just Built to Spill.
Yeah.
And he proudly says that, which is really cool.
Yeah. Melina, I know that you're taking this record across the world, I think, in November and December. I think there are shows in Europe, the UK and the US with this new album, and obviously with a slightly refreshed sound. And I know that that comes into production as well, but wondering how you're finding rehearsals and if there's a certain track off Belong that you're really looking forward to taking into that live space and translating to a live audience.
Yeah, I'm super excited to play this album live. I remember during the recording process, I kept thinking this is going to be awesome to play guitar too. And we played most of the songs on the record so far. There's some that are like impossible to play, but I'm really, really excited to play Past Lives because it's a heavier kind of track and we haven't played it yet. So post album release, this tour in the Europe and the UK and the US headlining tour, we're going to play that song. And I'm stoked because I love to arrange more to the live versions of the songs. And I just don't like copying exactly what is on the studio recordings. I like to expand and add some flourishes.
100%. I think that there are certain tracks where you almost need to have them, you know, semi-close to the record, but I think it's always fun to see what artists can do with a song in that live space, you know, stretch it out, different instrumentation. It's a duet, who knows? Like, it's fun to be able to play around with it once it almost has that foundation of its recorded version.
Yeah, exactly.
It might be a little bit of an obvious question, but I do have to ask on behalf of myself and Australian Jay Som fans, can we maybe expect to see maybe next year some shows down here in support of the record?
I'm just going to say yes so that I can manifest it because I also really would love to go to Japan again. That's, you know, amazing. And I had such an incredible time in Australia too. And the last time I went was in 2020. We went to Brisbane and Melbourne and Sydney. So it'd be fun to go back and have a longer tour. Yeah.
I was going to say, I imagine a tour in 2020, as we all know, that year was a little bit chaotic for everyone. I imagine
when I say 2020, I meant like it was January.
Yeah. It would be nice to come back and, as you said, take your time, do it a little bit slower, get to take more in and not have an impending worldwide pandemic kind of looming in the background.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
Well, look, again, hopefully we're manifesting that. Hopefully the universe is listening to this podcast episode at least and we can make something kind of happen. Lastly, we usually ask our guests what they're listening to at the moment. Melina, is there anything on high rotation for yourself that you're currently enjoying?
Oof, I have the same answer all the time. It's always the Tears of record that came out, I think like years ago, Trip 9 Love with the question marks. But I think just because we've been talking about her, I really love Hayley's new record. And there's so much depth to it. I just love what she does every single time. Yeah.
Absolutely love both of those recommendations. Melina, thank you so much for coming on to the podcast and chatting about the new Jay Som record. It is called Belong. It is out now when people are listening to our chat, and we'll make sure that there are links in the show notes where they can follow you on socials, stream the music, buy the record, you know, all that fun stuff. But Melina, thank you again for your time.
Thank you so much, Simon. Thanks for listening.